to make a start, tonight, welcome to Leicester Radio Society for a start. Tonight we have Michael Walker VA3MW from FlexRadio, and he's going to give us a talk on the FlexRadio technology and how it's improved our HF operating experience. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Michael.
Okay, thank you.
Could mute themselves. Thanks.
Perfect. Well, thank you for having me. And it's actually rather nice here today in Toronto, and we're starting to get into spring. And we've actually been doing reasonably well. I've actually got my second vaccination on Saturday, so pretty happy about that. So I'm going to spend about 40 minutes walking you through some of the FlexRadio stuff, and I think my goal here today is not necessarily a sales pitch, but just trying to show you where the technology is heading, and how we've come a long way from valves and tubes and into the toys we have today. And it's pretty exciting because we're way, in all honesty, compared to the rest of the electronics world, the amateur world's been really behind. And so we'll go through a bunch of stuff like that. So I've been with FlexRadio, I guess it's 4 years now. I actually come out of the IT industry in a data protection industry. So that's the group of people that back things up and recover data, usually for banks and a lot of Wall Street customers. So I'd spent a lot of time being yelled at by a lot of people that made a lot more money than I did, and when they couldn't get their data back. But I had a great career, and I can honestly say, in my career lifetime, that out of all the jobs I've had, amateur radio has played a component into getting me that job or advancing my career in any job, except for maybe one. It turns out that hams are worldwide, and if you got your ticket, they really do know, type of thing where your background's been. So anyway, so I'm going to go over some new radio terms, not a lot, a couple, 3, 4, and I'll talk a bit about the products and a bunch of other cool things and how they really make your shack really hum, and how you can have a much better performing radio for significantly less investment. How many people here are actually active in HF?
Yeah.
Okay, and
quite a few.
And cool. You'll see me looking up. I'm actually operating from a screen up here. That's the presentation screen. So I've got to look up there to make sure everything's correct. So what is an SDR radio? Or what is an SDR? What's a software-defined radio? And it's sort of a term, is a misnomer. It's a technology, actually. It's not the radio anymore. So we've gone from, spark gap to tubes to discrete components to surface mount components, and we keep getting smaller and smaller. And if you don't think you own an SDR radio, then I don't think anybody here owns a cell phone, because your cell phone's an SDR radio. And we really don't care what happens today's world, what happens between the antenna to the speaker, other than whatever we come in the antenna, we want it to be what we want it to be coming out of the speaker, whether that's CW or an audio signal, or maybe it's a digital mode like RTTY or FT8. And the software-defined part is the inner part of the radio. But, we often hear people on HF are going, hey, I'm listening to you on an SDR or a web SDR. Well, the advantage of the software-defined part, we'll see in a minute, and I'll explain a bit more about why software-defined is where we're going. And we're seeing that now with ICOM, Lessing, Kenwood, Yaesu, and certainly Elecraft. Because a lot of the hard work now, we've replaced all those inductors and coils and chokes with software in a device called an FPGA. Field Programmable Gate Array. It's easy to change that. If we come up with better ways of doing things, we just change the software in the radio. We send you an update, you install it, and wow, you have a whole new radio. Whereas before, If you wanted a whole new radio, you had to buy a whole new radio. You'd sell the old one at a big loss, and you'd come buy the new one, and type of thing. Our radios, and because of the way we do it, actually are like having multiple radios in one black box. And how do we do that? Well, it's because we receive the entire HF spectrum from about 30 kilohertz to 54 megahertz all at the same time. Whereas any other radio we've used before, if we're listening to sideband signal or even an FM signal, we're just looking at this little piece of the spectrum. But with a software-defined radio, some of them are only receive 48 kilohertz wide, some 96 kilohertz, and we do almost 54 megahertz wide. And that's a lot of data that gets turned from analog signals from an antenna into digital signals within the radio. If you're on HF quite a bit, you may have a radio with a main receiver and a sub receiver. Well, Flex radios have multiple receivers, not just a sub receiver, and they actually share the transmitter. So I may have a receiver slice, which I'll explain in a minute, and listening on 80 meters and 20 meters at the same time. And then if I need to talk on one of them, I just talk, and the transmitter is assigned to that. It happens in milliseconds. Okay. So one thing about Flex radios, now this is generally a U.S. presentation, but the radios are all designed and built in Austin, Texas. The engineering's there, the manufacturing's there. The only part that I think goes offshore is some metal work for the cabinets. Our support is also in all over the U.S. And multiple places, and Germany. And we work really close with our partners all over the world, our distributors. We have a couple in Germany. We have Walters, and I can't remember them. Is a big.
You'd have had 40 if we'd have got up to 4 third.
Okay.
That's what's
good. Hey, Robert, could you mute your mic?
Right. Not
Okay.
there.
Thank you. So, so we're all over the world. These are the only radios that come with a 2-year warranty. And at least in the U.S., we actually have a 30-day return policy. So what that means is if you could, U.S. friends. We still need Robert to mute.
That's all it's got to do. Put it on
a frequency.
I don't have a.
The software turns the picture into tones. So that does all
Robert
work.
Johnson.
So we need to go to a master.
Bob, can you turn your mic off, please?
David, can you mute Bob Johnson? I think you have the authority to do that.
Here, isn't it? Just because I'm putting it out yet.
In the upper right corner of his window, you can hit mute. There you go. Thank you. So anyway, we're all over the world and type of thing. And that was the staff at a number of years ago in Dayton. There's now 50 people working at Flex Radio approximately. So we talked about where the radios are made. You do not need to be a computer genius at all to use this radio. It doesn't need to be connected to the internet. Software licenses don't expire, and it's probably no more complicated than using a cellular phone. And we do a lot of stuff remotely. Remote operation, if that was something you were capable of doing, is built in. You can do that from the ground up, type of thing. So the spectral capture unit, and we're missing I wonder where we lost our closing brackets there. This is the part that takes the energy from the radio waves and turns it into digital, so that the computers can do what they need to do. And as I said, it does the entire HF or amateur radio spectrum to above 6 meters. And if you want to use that in human terms, your eyes or your ears could be considered spectral capture units. They look at a lot of things, but we only focus on the stuff we need at the moment. So a couple of key terms. Field programmable gate array is a type of computer chip, and it's the thing that does, it's like a big CPU. It's like a big number cruncher. The client part is the part that you and I use to interface to the radio. It can be the Windows program called Smart SDR. It could be a standalone box called a Maestro that sits on your desk. And then you can put the radio anywhere you want, on the desk, under the desk, different room, half a world away. It gets a lot of stuff off your desk. Cat, while you may be familiar with that in the HF world, that's computer data transceiver. That's the part where we send commands from our logging programs to the radio. And digital audio exchange is used to get audio from the radio into the transceiver, or vice versa. And if you're a digital operator, you've probably, in anything that's not current, you would have had to go out and purchase something like a Signal Link or a Rig Expert or something to buffer that audio through. This is all built into the software now. Some radios have it already. They've just cracked the surface on it. We do it in a much bigger way. As I mentioned, the field programmable gate array is the part that does all the number crunching. And this is where we replace all those filters and mixers and capacitors and everything that we don't need anymore. And because the radio is direct sampling, meaning we don't mix it with anything, and this is something Yaesu does, and every mixer you insert into a circuit actually creates more noise. And we don't like noise in HF radio. So by getting rid of all the mixers and making them direct sampling, we've improved how well the radio works. And so we don't down mix or mix it. And if you probably remember from a long time ago when we were in ham radio school and we had all that that teaching on, what happens when you mix two frequencies, you get, the sum and the difference and the two unique frequencies we started with. So you have to deal with those. Well, with a direct sampling radio, you don't have to deal with them. And by the way, in the human world, so we talk about the eyes. The eyes were your spectral capture unit, or your ears. Your brain is your FPGA. Okay, it's the part that takes whatever we sample and makes it something we can use. Now, our radios either have 2, 4, or 8 slices. And the slice is just a different term for a receiver. And we use the term slice because it's a slice of the radio spectrum. And the nice thing about our slices is they can be pretty much anywhere on the HF spectrum. I could have a slice on 6 meters. Like today, when 6 meters is open for us in North America, I could also have a slice on 80 at the same time. You're not really restricted in this flexibility. And, it's no pun intended on the word flex radio, but it is very flexible and easily modified to do what we want to do. The radio clients are the part we use to talk to the radio, the part, the human interface, or as I jokingly say, the protein unit part, the parts, we're a big pile of protein. So we're the protein part that wants to use the radio. So we do have Smart SDR for Windows. That's the user interface that runs on Windows. We have the Maestro, which is a nice big stand on the desk control head with a nice big 8-inch display on it. Most other vendors are 7-inch display, so you get a bit more real estate. We have a standalone radio called the M models. There's 2 of them. And they can just sit on your desk like any HF radio you've owned today. You can hook up the power, hook up an antenna. You can go to field day mode where you sat it on a picnic table and operate. You don't have to have it connected to the internet. In fact, none of our radios need to be connected to the internet to work. And if you're a Mac person, we've got a lot of options. Smart SDR for iOS, it'll run on your iPhone. Smart SDR for Mac, which will run on your Macintosh. Dog Park SDR, written by Don VE3VRW here in Toronto, which will also run on a Mac. A lot of different options. I'm a big fan of the Maestro for connecting to the radio. So this is what the Windows client looks like. And by the way, we're just breezing over a bunch of stuff here so that this allows you to just sort of get a taste of all the things it can do. It runs on Windows, works with all our 6000 series radios. There's 5 different models, actually 7. We're currently making, is there 5, 7? 7, and we're currently still in manufacture on 5 of them. And you can easily have your, WSJT or Windows digital programs communicate with the radio for running FT8, slow scan TV, PSK31, any of the 100 other sound card modes that are available. So this is there's the current models we make are the 6400, the 6600, and the 6700. There are two other models that we stopped making a number of years ago called the 6300 and the 65. And while they don't, you can't go buy them new anymore, they are certainly available, and our current software still runs on them. And this is what we mean by future proof. If you'd bought a Flex 6300 back in 2013 when it came out, that's, 8 years ago, which is forever in this industry. That's like a century. You can still run the current software and get the current feature and functionality. So you haven't really lost anything. If you've been in HF long enough, you probably know about the ICOM came out with 3 series of the 756 Pro. So it was the Pro 2, and Pro 3. And if you wanted to upgrade, you had to sell one at a loss and buy a new one. It was a big, expensive exercise. Not the case in the Flex 6000 series radios. So a couple of key differences. Spectral capture unit, that's like your eyes. You know, it's the part that receives the entire spectrum. On the 6400 series, there's only one of them. And what that means is it can use one antenna at a time. So if you've got a multi-band antenna like a G5RV, and that's all you have, that's great, works perfect. And it'll get all your HF down that one piece of coax. And so that's really quite handy. It's a very popular radio. We sell a lot of them. It's an amazing radio. It's good enough for contests, even like CQ Worldwide or CQWPX on sideband. And if you've ever done those contests, it's wall-to-wall people. And the receiver does a wonderful job of it. They actually support transverters if you're a VHF, UHF, or higher weak signal person or into the microwave area. And then we have the M model, which gives you the front panel, which looks like the Maestro. I'll have a bigger close-up on that later. And that's the 6400M is all built in on a front panel. Then we get to the 6600. The 6600 has 2 spectral capture units. And what that really allows you to do is it behaves like 2 separate radios on my desk. Before, if you wanted to be on 80 meters and 20 meters at the same time, or 6 meters, you had to have 2 physical radios. Well, you don't have to anymore. In the 6600, the spectral capture units allow you to use 2 different antennas at the same time, and then use any one of the 4 receivers or slices to be on either one. It doesn't matter. You tell it what antenna to listen to. Bandpass filters are built in. Even the 6400 has bandpass filters. Really handy for field day. Or if you've got a nearby neighbor on HF, it helps reject them so you don't hear them if they're on a different band. And again, like the 6400M, we have a 6600M, which adds the front panel display. And in both our M models, you can actually hook it up to an external TV. You get the big picture at 1920 by 1080 pixels, which is pretty big. It's HD quality. And lastly, in the current radios, we still have the 6700. This radio came up about 2013, 2014. It has 8 slices. And why do I need 8 slices? Well, that's what everybody says when they buy one, and then they're using 6 all the time. It has 2 spectral capture units like the 6600. And all these radios, if you're a serious contester and if you're doing single operator 2 radio, which means you're actually listening on one band and talking in another at the same time because you just want to go faster, all the hardware to do that is all built into the 6600 and the 6700. You don't have to go buy anything else. You can flip into SO2R mode with 10 minutes of setting up a couple of key menus. Now the Maestro, which I've mentioned a few times, the Maestro is a control head. This is what it looks like. As I said, it's about this big. I've got one over here, but if I turn my camera, there's a light in behind, so it just doesn't, it's really hard to see. But it has all the connections on the back of the Maestro that you would have on the back of a normal HF radio. And from microphones and speakers and CW key, it's Wi-Fi or LAN-based. You can plug your headphones or powered speakers in, a whole bunch of different things. And the radio can now be on the desk, underneath the desk, as I said earlier, next room, or half a world away. So it's quite a handy device for, there we go. Phil's got one. Phil, and I bet you couldn't get it out of his cold, dead hands, right, Phil? So there you go. The new item we have, if you need a tuner, and this is a full legal limit tuner, even for us in Canada, because we're allowed a little more power than some other countries. It's good for about 2,000 watts. This is the Tuner Genius XL, and it's actually like owning two tuners, designed for the SO2R operator. But there's also a version that is 3 antenna ports out on the back, so you can use it for antenna switching between 1, 2, and 3. It's incredibly fast, and it's good for about a 10-to-1 SWR, which is about normal. And it connects on your LAN to interface all this. And I'm going to show you how complicated this stuff is to hang up in a bit. The Power Genius XL, which is an incredibly powerful amplifier, again, SO2R design. So we made it as robust and useful as possible, but you can dumb it down as you need to. It's got a really cool thing that no other amplifier has, and that's the harmonic load, harmonic dummy load. So if you remember from our schooling, in any amplifier, when we amplify a signal, let's say it's on 20 meters, you're going to get a big harmonic on 28 megs, double, and others beyond that. And what we do in every amplifier is we have a low pass filter that lets the 14 meg signal through, and we capture everything else so it doesn't make it to the antenna. We have to do that by law. So what happens in every other amplifier is it hits a brick wall, high impedance brick wall, and it's reflected. So it sits there, this energy gets to the high pass filter, goes, whoa, can't make it, and like a wave hitting a wall, reflects back to the power amplifier, and then it eventually gets dissipated in heat. But it also affects the quality of your transmitted signal because it has the ability to distort that signal. The harmonic load isolator in the Power Genius is actually a high pass filter, and it funnels that reflected energy off and sends it over to a dummy load where it's sent into heat as well. It does not affect our transmitted signal at all. It's a little RF plumbing, and it works incredibly well. Again, the setup, it's all LAN based, although it will support OEM radios like the Tuner Genius. So it'll actually work with Kenwood, ICOM, Yaesu, or Elecraft radios as well. And I'll send you guys a PDF printout of this presentation so you can click on the links to learn a bit more. Cool feature, by the way, of I'm sure Phil's used this one, of the Maestro, is you can turn on something called Smart Control, and that allows you to use the knobs on the radio mixed in with Smart SDR in your PC. And it gives you a nice big VFO knob as well. Or you can just use a flex control knob plugged into your PC, which gives you, and I was going to reach for mine, but I pulled it out for something and it's not right here. Nice big VFO knob sitting on your desk so that you can easily dial up and down the bands. This plugs right into the PC and sends commands right to the radio. If you're, this is something nobody else does. You can plug these devices into the back of the radio and control multiple amplifiers, bandpass filters, tuners. Heck, you can even set up put a quick relay in there and have a little on-the-air light up every time you hit the foot switch if your radio goes in transmit. And that's pretty cool too. This makes it incredibly versatile and easy to interface a flex radio with any other vendor's radio or hardware, like a KPA 500 amplifier or MFJ amplifiers. So SO2R, I won't spend any time on this, but this is normally something where if you did this before, you'd have to buy 2 HF radios, 2 amplifiers, 2 tuners, maybe some bandpass filters, station controllers, and then wire it all together. And I have a diagram of what that looks like coming up. And it's a bit of a, it's quite elaborate. And but the way we do it was we have it all communicate on the LAN network, on your home network. That's a local area network. And let me just show you a picture, an example. This is from Sugar Echo 3 X-Ray. And I emailed him and asked him if I could borrow this picture. And it turns out he was a Flex customer, and he goes, oh, I haven't used that in forever. Where'd you find that diagram? But, this is a single operator 2 radio setup, but if you were just a normal 1 operator radio, you might have half as much stuff there. And all these red and blue wires, you got power cables going, RS-232 cables going, RF cables, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I just want to show this because it's, it becomes very complicated. And I think it's usually a rite of passage. You get this all done and working, and you create this great Visio diagram, and then you go to a club meeting and you present it. And everybody sits there and their eyes glass over, goes, it's really impressive. Wow, he really knows what he's doing, but I have no idea what he's doing. And so you're all polite and sit there and try not to fall asleep. This is the equivalent in the Flex world, and these are all the cables. We've got 5 LAN cables, a couple of RF cables between each device, and you're done. And so now I just did a presentation 2 weeks ago for IDXC in California on the death of the RS-232 cable, or the serial, or the cat cable that we've called it. That's been around as long as most of us have. And it's about a half-century old technology. But yeah, we still bring it out. And then one of the cool features we have built into the radio is something called Multiflex. Can you imagine where you have 2 people using your radio at the same time? So you could have a friend of yours, maybe a shut-in, somebody who's in long-term care, either locally or remote, or 2 people sitting at a field day using the same radio at the same time. And that's what Multiflex is all about. You could have 2 Maestros or 2 Windows PCs or an iPhone or any one of whatever the clients can connect to the radio. And it's a big feature for our remote operators that are also dealing with I hear a lot with shut-ins where, I'm a ham, my dad's a ham, but, he's in some long-term care, but he can pull out an iPad on a Tuesday night and still get on the HF nights. He likes, getting on and maybe say a few words, or certainly just listen to his friends. And we have a lot of that goes on here in North America, and I'm sure you do in Europe as well. For my techie geeky guys that have a lot of things connected to the radio, we use this tool as an interim tool called Smart Sdr Cat. And you can now have as many Cat devices connected to the radio as you need. This is virtual, meaning it's just all on the computer. So it's a simple matter of minor configuration. You don't have to go out and build and solder cables and trying to, solder in all those wires onto that 13-pin DIN connector that's on the back of most Kenwood and ICOM radios. You can now do it without even heating up a soldering iron. And the same thing for DAX, or digital audio exchange. This is again how we share the audio information from the radio to our programs like WSJT, FLDigi, MMTTY, or whatever, slow scan, etc. And this is as complicated as your network needs to be. Maybe we have a modem for our internet. The radio's plugged into the modem. Maybe we've got a laptop on Wi-Fi. Pretty straightforward. Probably no different than taking your cellular phone and just making it work on your home network. And this is more of a technical conversation. So it's not uncommon for software-defined radios like the 7610, the 7300, even the K4, to suffer from an RF overload issue where it just has too much signal, and then you have to knock in some attenuation to adjust it automatically. There is no such thing as RF overload. We do it a totally different way that makes it incredibly good and a lot user-friendly, a lot more user-friendly. And that tool, by the way, we called as AGC, Automatic Gain Control Threshold, and it replaces the RF gain that we probably grew up with. So I'm going to play this video, and I forgot to include audio, so I'm just going to terminate the presentation for a minute, and I just got to restart it. I forgot to hit screen 1, share sound. I knew I was going to do that. So in this audio, it's back up, is it? Just nod your head. Okay, when I hit play and you don't hear it, you just get all excited and I'll figure it out. This is a YouTube video I have, and what it is here in Toronto on 80 meters is me listening to an HF net that I'm part of. And when you see that, you can see that green bar right now. That green bar is a really loud noise signal. And if you're not familiar with a waterfall, that's the bottom half of the screen. The newer signals on the top and the oldest one's at the bottom. So the water falls down, and there's some history there. So you can see where I've been turning. There's blue and green, and then there's all green. And the blue and green is what I want. That's what I want to listen to. So you can have a listen to the net controller, and one of them's a little stronger. The other one's a little weaker. But the weaker one, we don't hear at all until I turn the wide noise blanker on. So here we go. This runs for about 40 seconds.
WB2KAO here. Good morning, Barry.
Now, WB2KAO, we can barely hear. Let me turn the blanker back on.
Yeah, real good, Barry. Just got off the bike, and I thought, well, let me check in with you here for a minute before I go up and get in the shower. We got quite a bit of snow.
Hear the difference? That's significant power line noise. And it might have been a bad insulator just through my trees here. About 400 meters is 500 kilovolt distribution lines. They're actually, I know we blame them a lot. They're actually not the source of most of my noise here in my house. I actually run a remote station. I've pretty much proven that most of my HF noise in my house is in my house, and I've gotten rid of a lot of it. And I'll tell you, these are the worst. Okay, that's a US plug on it, but these little switching power supplies, and you'll notice that this one, because I grabbed it to do something, has no chokes on it. And I'll be honest, some of the worst ones I've seen were made by Garmin. I'm a cyclist, so I had this broadband noise one day, and it turned out it was my charger for my cycling computer. And of course, it only showed up in like the spring, and I'm sitting here going, what changed? So I've gotten very good at running around the house looking for noise. And the best tool you can do it, if you've got a handheld that does AM, and if you see some noise, even on 20, and some of the handhelds like the VX 6R, 7R, some of them do shortwave. And if they do, awesome. Turn it on AM around 14 meg, put a quarter wave whip or any antenna, and just start going up and holding it to things. I had a Cisco switch here in my ham shack. It wiped out VHF. And I bought it at a Hamfest for $10. It was a 100 megabit switch. It was good enough for what I was doing. The power supply in it was shot. And it couldn't have been that noisy when they released it, but maybe because it was a commercial switch designed for business, it does not have to be as quiet, at least in North America, as a home one. So it was a bit of an eye-opener. So that ended up in the trash right away, and I replaced it with another one. It was wiping out my VHF signals. So, okay, don't play again. It does this every time. All right, here's another one, the second video. Here in North America, we get a lot more lightning in this part of the country from Florida all the way north. So the low band on 80 meters is during the summer can be hard to listen to because you get these huge static crashes. Now I've been in London for a thunderstorm, but you guys don't get them near as much as we do. And in fact, there was so much rain on that storm on a Friday afternoon that it flooded Air Canada baggage at Heathrow. And I was a little late getting out of there. It was like a foot of water in the baggage area. You guys got a really nice storm. But as a storm chaser, I thought that was pretty impressive. But I'm going to walk through a little bit of me setting the AGCT, and then how, instead of this big, if you're on HF and you've had to deal with lightning, you get this big static crash on a traditional radio. The S meter goes all the way over to the side, and then it slowly decays, and now you can hear the guy talking again, right? And then you say, sorry, I missed what you said. A static crash took you out. I recorded this about a month ago where the lightning is hitting about every 10 seconds or more. And there's only about 300 miles away. Not even that, about 150 miles away. And I show the map where it is. And then I'm going to adjust the radio. And you can still hear this, but it's not a big deal. and you'll sort of have to hear it. Now, try not to listen to the conversation, because the conversation actually turned out to be the same net. They could be talking about anything. They're all friends of mine. I wasn't really paying attention, and Chad is talking about something that happened in a farm. It's a little heavy, so to speak, and I didn't think about it until later when I was making, because I wasn't even listening to them, but I kept it in the conversation. The net controller's a little weaker. He's actually in Rochester, New York, over Lake Ontario. But anyway, you'll get the idea. And what you're looking for to listen to is, you can hear the lightning, you can see the horizontal bar and the lightning. Those are what each one of those are in the waterfall. But the impact of the conversation is incredibly minimal. Here we go. See it? I'm about here. In fact, I'm right there. That little green dot is my lightning map receiver. And here's the storm right over Lake Huron coming into Georgian Bay. And you can see a bit of stuff going on here. So we'll get rid of that. So let's turn on the audio, and I want you to just listen to what we're hearing here. Okay. My AGCT for 80 meters, let's see, is way too high. Let me turn off my audio. Or we'll turn this down. If I adjust my AGCT just down, you'll notice it gets really quiet. But you go, I'm not going to be able to hear anything. Let me turn this. No, I'm going to turn this level up to normal level. And we hear that click. And that's the Fast Attacks Dual AGC. Click on, click off. I'm at medium, by the way, not at fast, not at slow. So how does that translate if you want to listen to a couple of guys? There's a net here on 3755.
1718. Anyway, the one went into the silo, died from the gas. The other one went into, seen his brother floundering there, went in, and he died too.
So you'll notice we can hear, that's my buddy Chad, speaking, just rag chewing about whatever. And plain as day, sort of like the winter on a quiet day. Yeah, it's not perfect, but man, it's easy to listen to.
Similar story. Silos are nothing to mess with. Matter of fact, a lot of people put signs on the doors, especially up high, not to get in there. And that's a shame. Thanks for sharing that with everyone. It's VE2HOG, and he's a farmer, so he knows what's going on. This is the ONTARS net. Anybody like to check in before I have to check?
So I hope that gives you an idea of how aggressive and how well this radio is at knocking down what we hear. And if you, next time if you're on HF and you grab your Superhet radio, whatever you have, and you're dealing with lightning within a few hundred miles, have a listen and see if you can still hear the entire conversation, or if you lose sentences or words because of the lightning strike. It's a pretty powerful tool. Oh yeah, now you're going to play again. This slide, see it? I'm about here. In fact, I'm right there. This slide and I go through this every presentation. There we go. So only a few left. One of the cool things about the radio, because we've put it all on this land now, is we can have 100 different programs get data from the radio. We have logging programs. We have user programs that make it easier or to automate or connect to the radio, like FR Stack, just to bring some features on the radio over to a desktop, which is nice. Slice Master, which makes setting up for WSJT literally a 3-mouse click exercise, pretty simple. You can do an SWR plot of your antenna system and keep it for record. I do that a lot with my 160 meter antenna, because as my ground freezes, my resonance changes due to my ground losses, and I have to then either make it longer or shorter. Logging programs, voice cues, everything. And you're not just limited to programs that are written for the Flex world, because in computer programs we use with HF radio, they're written to support a certain type of radio. Well, we emulate anything in Kenwood format, so that immediately makes us work with just about everything else. I'm just going to skip that slide. And then lastly, if you want to learn more, we have a whole community at community.flexradio.com, where we have people talking about what they're working on or problem seeing. Okay, even our dirty laundry, if things aren't going well, we're happy to deal with it. We don't hide a whole lot. We've got a whole help desk system. We've got a lot of videos on YouTube in the Flex Radio channel. from new introductions, or if I've got a radio, how to set up one thing or the other, and direct sales and phone number addresses. And that's pretty much it. So I'm open to any questions if you've held off for your dessert until later. But,
Well,
anyone?
Thanks for that, Mike. That was very useful. Suppose when's 3.2.37 going to be available?
I know you're gonna ask that. So okay, to fess up, so we have a little issue going on. Okay, it's a significant issue, but it where remote users could not connect to their radio. It was due to it's a long story, but anyway, it's due to a significant update in something called .NET. We run on .NET, as most Windows programs do, and we're in that sort of battle between, do we keep it current or keep it stable? And so we got a little bit behind the curve, and we got most of it. We missed one thing, and it caused the authentication to fail. And we didn't actually think it would be an issue, but it was a big issue. So our remote operators were offline for about a week. We've got it half fixed. For the Windows users, are all good to go. And the Maestro M model people, Phil, I think you're going to see it tomorrow. But we're closed today. Please don't post it on social media, but we released the 3.2.38. I'm actually running it right here on Friday to our alpha team. Saw a few little hiccups, no major showstoppers. So we'll have a meeting tomorrow morning. And if it's blessed, it'll be probably out before lunch our time. And the only ugly is is your Maestro an A or a B?
It's an A.
Good, because it updates in about 5 minutes.
Oh, right.
The B will take about 3 hours because there's a whole bunch of, they call them KBs. They all have to come in on .NET and be updated. It works. I'm about ready to record a B update and do a bunch of screenshots on it. So, but I think we'll be good to go. And you'll notice a performance improvement, by the way.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah.
Okay, so. Like I said, we got some dirty laundry like every vendor has, but at least we're here to talk about it.
Hi, Mike. Just a quick one. I just was quite keen to find out when the 6400 was released. Which year, roughly?
About 3 years ago, 3.5.
Okay.
So I started 4, and it came out in the fall of that year, like 17.
Okay, that's good.
And if you're looking at one, you can tell by the serial number.
Okay. There was something else I noticed. There was no USB cable on the Maestro. And there was on the Sdr radio. Does that get negated because you've got the smart Sdr DAX, which does all your cat control?
I'm going to say yes based on how you're answering the question. So you do not require any hardware for digital modes for like before. So because we communicate between the user and the radio using LAN cable, it negates anything to do USB from that way. The USB connector on the back of the radio is to hook up a physical cable for cat control to external devices.
Yeah, I've got
so that could be serial or parallel.
I've got one
or even
into my
bit level.
SPE.
I was cleaning, so like one of these.
Okay, I see. Yes,
It's just and so it's got a DB9. Not that you can tell DB9 connector. So this was actually the one that was for my KPA 500 amplifier a long time ago.
Okay, and is there an ATU option?
This good question. The 6400 has an optional ATU, and the 6600 it's included.
Okay, I see. Yes. And just one last one. The Maestro, is that only a Ethernet connection, or was there a Wi-Fi connection as well?
2.4 and 5 gig Wi-Fi.
Okay, so you don't. Okay, that's perfect. Thank you.
So
you need to have a good Wi-Fi. Though, don't you?
Yes.
I think Phil's going to say, I think he's saying what I'm going to say. I think Wi-Fi is evil for what we're doing with the amateur radio. It's too fragmented. It's too overloaded. And especially if you're in a dense area, your Wi-Fi has to wait for your neighbor's Wi-Fi. and it's all in the what they call the RFC. And so if your neighbor's streaming multiple video streams and you're on the same channel, and there's really not that many channels, there's only 3 at 2.4 gig, and then there's probably 20. I used to know the number at 5 gig, but your range is a lot shorter. So I'm a big fan of, if you're going to operate HF, try to be wired when you can. Doesn't always work.
Yes.
Just be prepared for fragmentation or dropout or latency.
Can I ask about the point at which the receiver might be damaged? Flex radios have full duplex available. What is the level of signal that's going to damage the receiver?
A lot.
I'll
have to look up the number, but I have run 2 kilowatts, half a wavelength away, while listening on 20 meters.
Yeah, and that's part of the isolation, which I can measure. But
right.
Actually, from a signal source right into the antenna socket direct.
There is a number. I can't remember what it is in dB. You're the first person to ask me that. It's pretty high. And it's actually protected in a couple of ways. First off, you start to get warnings on your screen. And I can actually operate, I have 2 radios on my remote, and if I bring up the 6700, I can start to get the warnings on if I'm on full power on the 20 meter, because it's right above that. I have tried to blow it up. I can't. I've forgotten how many microvolts it is. It's a pretty high number. I have yet to see a radio come in that's had the front end destroyed. And keep in mind, no radio that I know of grounds antenna ports when it's not in use. So even though your radio may not be on, it is always still receiving antenna energy down and through the connector into the front end. That front end is forever connected to the outside world. And we had a customer once who lived near a broadcast station. It was about a block away, at AM broadcast at probably 50 kilowatts, and he was getting these warnings, ADC front end overload warnings, and type of thing. And I could probably go look it up pretty quickly if you give me a second on the number. It's in the hardware reference manual, so I'll try to do that before we're done, type of thing. But it's pretty tank proof, type of thing.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, but let me go look it up, because, like I said, it's pretty fast. I think I know where it is. Any other questions? I'll just multitext here for a second. Multitask. Documents. I can even show you where it is in the document, assuming I get it right the first time, because it's in one of 2 manuals. Let's see. Control F is my friend.
Are there any other new products on the horizon, or?
Not that I can talk about.
And they're all US Air Force.
To be honest, no, we're pretty static for a while. So we've been, let's see if there's any, I can't find it in the hardware reference manual. We have been, and Phil, you'll appreciate this, we've been pretty consumed with the U.S. government contract, U.S. military. And that has, I'll be honest, I'm not telling anything you don't know. The amateur world's been sort of not hugely stagnant. Instead of 80% of our time in amateur, it's more like 20% of our time just doing maintenance. So for that, I apologize. I'm going to go to the software manual. Just a second. And so we were always looking at a bunch of different things. Should we do a VHF, UHF radio? And so we get a big push for that. The answer could be yes, if the market shows that building it would pay for it. So if you're a business, we got to be able to design it, build it, and make money from it. And the amateurs have to buy it. So can you sell enough of them, or make enough profit on it? We are in the business of making money, so to speak. Okay.
I was always quite surprised that ICOM bought the 9700 out, really, because it seems a fairly limited market. But I've got one.
This one?
Yeah.
It's, you know what? I haven't turned it on in months since I replaced it with 2 transverters.
Yeah.
I like it. And there's some things that drive me absolutely batty, like the stability. I'm still looking for overload.
Yeah, well, the stability's not great, and if you've got any very local, very strong signals nearby, it's not great either.
No, I'm going to share this. Bob, you asked, right? So let me make it a bit bigger. Okay, you see that okay?
Yep. Which bit do I need to look at?
Okay, so the overload limit for the SCD is reduced by any gain out of the preamp. For example, 10 dB of gain selected. Is this the right one? Plus 10 dBm. That is your answer right here.
That's not actually very much, is it? 10
Well,
milliwatts.
it's not going to take watts.
Right, but 10 milliwatts isn't a lot.
Down an antenna port, that would be a lot coming in through an antenna off an antenna.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's pretty significant. I'll tell you what, I know my ICOMs wouldn't take that.
I take it that's when the protection circuitry kicks in anyway.
Yes.
So.
Right. Yes, it wasn't distortion I was worried about. It was actual damage. And so this protection circuitry, presumably, is it bomb-proof or is it just good?
It's pretty bomb-proof.
Right. Okay.
We do have an overload spreadsheet. It looks like a tax form. You can always run stuff through it as well. But
and where can I find that?
It is on the website. If you go search for it, I haven't pulled it up in forever, so I can't remember. If I think about it, just email me.
Okay, will do, Mike.
At info@flexradio.com, and I'll go find it. It'd take me a while to find. It's usually on my actually, I might even have it on your calculator. No, but I do need to add it to my list. All right. Any other questions? Let's make sure Barry doesn't cut off a finger.
Nobody else?
I'm not so sure Barry should be let loose with a sharp knife.
Well, has he got a pint with him?
Yeah, it's probably Coke.
Yeah, it's Coke tonight. So just doing some maintenance. My PL plug fell off earlier. So,
you know, when I teach this stuff, I tell people if you can't pull on a PL 259 with all your weight,
you
ain't doing it right.
If it comes off in your hand, be thankful it came off in your hand.
Yeah,
not bad. It's been on there about 6 or 7 years, so you know it stood the test of time, so to speak.
Good. Well, David, anything else we can do for you?
I don't think so. It's just been interesting, and I'll go and see my mortgage broker.
or you could sell that FTDX 101, Dave.
Oh, do you have a
Nothing wrong with
101?
that, Phil.
Sorry?
Nothing wrong with that. I can afford it.
And you have a 101?
Yes, indeed.
I'm not one for putting down vendors, and I'm not really trying to, but Yaesu presented at IDXC about the 101. They were terrible. We watched it later, and I mean, I'm a ham, right? I've got an ICOM radio here, you know. I even though I represent Flex, even if I left the company, I still don't think I'd change what I use because it fits what I do. But their presentation was terrible, and you know, they were taking a shot at something we said, which is fair, but he was not accurate in what he was saying, and I had friends call me, go, "Did you see what he said?" I said, "Yeah." I said, He's guessing. Anyway, I've been a ham since 1974. I've done just about everything in it, et cetera, et cetera. So it's you get the idea. But the 101's a great radio. Display would drive me nuts, but other than that, I think it's a great radio.
Having sat and played with numerous radios at one of the Hamvention things locally, I eventually thought, no, the only one that really goes properly and does more or less what it says on the tin was the 101. And I'm still learning now. But having said that, at the moment, I couldn't afford a Flex, which I dearly love. But I think, maybe sometime.
Bob, in the chat window is the link to the calculation worksheet, if you can find that. If you search on Flex Radio calculation, it tends to come up. But if not, or just email me and I'll send it over to you. But this is what this is for everybody else. This is sort of what it looks like. So when you start doing RF overload and stuff, you start with your transmitter power, antenna coupling, and a bunch of stuff, and you work your way through, and then you come up with it does look like a tax form, right? Subtract line 5 from 4. This is your worst case scenario. Anyway. Did you get it, Bob? Just nod your head. Okay, he's deep in thought.
Looking.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks very much. It's been
I hope you gleaned a few things from it.
Yes. As I said, go and see the mortgage broker.
You can't take it with you.
No, that's very true. Very true.
Well, 73, have a good evening, and I'll let you carry on with the rest of your meeting.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. Bye.
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 Thanks, Mike.
Good evening.
Yeah.
Oh. So